Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Good morning.
It's amazing. Guess what just happened? I heard a thing that says 9 a.m. Sunday morning. I think, Sean, this is the first time in months, if not years, that I've actually started the thing and heard the bell.
That's all my fault.
That's right. So let me introduce some people here. First of all, we have our guest, Sean McEvoy from HP, on my right, and on my left, usual, my co-host, Mr. Chris Keefe. When we started this 10 years ago, we didn't even know what podcasts were. And David Levin, my alter ego. It's about right, right?
I think it works.
Good morning, everybody. So we're here again, and we retooled a little bit. Sean is our guest today, so David, don't make any of those noises. And the whole purpose of getting together today is we're all in some sort of sales and marketing role, and instead of talking to people that theoretically do what we say we do, we want to start talking to real people about sales and marketing, growth hacking. You know, what do you do? What do you say? What makes you different? Ready?
Go.
So let me just start off with my favorite one, Sean. Sean, what is your superpower?
My superpower? Oh, that's a good question. My approach is a little bit different than most of your typical technology sales folks. I have been an engineer before. I'm very technical. I live in this stuff. I breathe in this stuff, and I do networking today, and I can build a network. So my superpower is staying one step ahead of where the customer is technically.
How did you get
Awesome.
Go ahead, Chris.
I like that. I like being able to stay ahead of where the customer is going, because it's vitally important that you can lead that customer to where he wants to go. Go ahead, Mark.
Sure. What made you get into sales?
I started out as an engineer back in the day on the storage side of things, back, 11 years ago. And, sales was where the money was. So I'm one of the few people that made that transition successfully. I know a lot of engineers that have tried end up going back to engineering because they see that last 10% of a sales cycle and think, wow, I can do that. I can just close the deal. They miss that front end, the 90%, where you actually have to do the work. And so I made that leap about 15, 20 years ago and stuck with it and been doing it since.
And what are you selling today?
Today I'm with HP Networking, so I do the full networking portfolio, switches, routers, wireless management software for that, and we're part of the enterprise group at HP, so we do the server storage networking as a converged stack, but we also do standalone networking for networking's sake. My customer base is mostly global financials, mostly large company names that you've heard of before. And they've got a myriad of different challenges. A lot of the financials are working differently, thinking differently. Things like white boxes are coming up now. Things like software-defined X is coming up now. And they're encountering challenges from competitors they never thought they'd be competing against, companies like Google. So it's an interesting marketplace, and I think everything is up for grabs, and that's what makes it kind of exciting for me to kind of, I stay ahead on the technology side, but also on the business side. Where's the puck going from a business perspective? These days, as our CEO, Meg Whitman, says, if you're not willing to cannibalize your own business, somebody else will be happy to do it. I mean, look at Uber. They just came in and crushed the taxi marketplace and the limo marketplace. So if you're not willing to look at your own marketplace and look for efficiencies, look for new angles, somebody else will be happy to do that for you.
I like that.
So,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I just had a question. So, being that you kind of started off as an engineer, then went into sales after, almost as a second life, I guess we can call it.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a certain sales methodologies that you subscribe to?
I don't subscribe to one in particular. I mean, I've taken on just about every sales training course you can imagine out there, and I find you can't really internalize the entirety of one. It's been developed by some guy who, you haven't lived his life, but each one you take a little piece from, and that's, if you can walk away with just one little piece from each one, put that together into your own methodology. But most of my sales methodology comes from practice, from doing what I do for so long. It's kind of regimented. And it also is intimate to the customer, because each customer is a little bit different. We go to selling school, they go to buying school. So they know how to twist our knobs better than we know how to twist theirs at times. So you have to be a little more customer intimate. And each kind of salesperson works differently with each different customer. My technical approach is not for everybody, because the last thing that some of these folks need is somebody like me coming in that may know more than they do in some cases. That's a threat to some. To others, it's not. They open up and say, "Great, let's figure out how to move forward." So it's different for each one. And some customers are more touchy-feely relationship than they are technical. So there's other salespeople that may be more proficient in that. I'm not the warm fuzzy guy sometimes. I'm the numbers guy. I'm the efficiency guy. I'm the guy that shows a better, faster way to build a network.
Great.
So it's interesting. So I'm sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
How is selling for you evolved in the last 3 or 4 years with
not just 3 or 4 years, been evolving constantly, and it's always been a challenge to most salespeople's innate ability is selling from the bottom up. We'll start at the guy at the front line and work our way up towards the CIO. Others work top down. Again, each company is going to be different, but all of them these days is transforming from moving. The conversation starting with that guy at the front line is great. That budget's already spent. So the goal is to get farther back in the chain to the guy that develops the budget, which means getting into uncomfortable conversations with people you would never normally speak to. Guys that develop applications. What does that have to do with networking? Everything at the end of the day. So we have to keep going farther up towards the C level, but farther back in that chain. So talking to the guy that's transforming applications from legacy to mobile apps, so they can run on handheld devices. Transforming applications so they can run in a public cloud versus locally in my own data center where latency isn't really a problem. So there's a lot of these transformations, and the farther back you can get in that chain, the more likely you are to be included in the eventual solution.
So Sean, that's actually very interesting and very very salient to what I'm doing as well. Just out of curiosity, so when you're talking to guys, when you kind of grew up in the industry, talking to the networking team essentially and the CXO team that's responsible for those budgets, now things are going out to lines of business where you've got developers that are actually building the apps but have to connect to these legacy back-end systems through these legacy networks that weren't really, let's just say, tuned or built to run that way.
Right.
Have you found that to be just organizationally a challenge to jump from a guy who's a developer who's maybe building something up in AWS to play around before he actually brings it to his team to roll out and then realizes that, wait, how am I going to connect to all this other stuff? Is that something where you've been able to use your technical skills to kind of logic people through? And
in some cases, yeah, and in some, no. I mean, some of the most interesting and most challenging conversations I've had. Let's say software-defined X, software-defined data center, software-defined networking 18 months ago when it was a new concept. This is missionary work. We're selling the benefits that aren't really even here yet. The most interesting conversations I had were with the managing directors in charge of application development. And I can think of one in particular off the top of my head that he said, "This is fantastic. I understand it. I grok this thing. What can I do with it?" And at that point, we were still kind of figuring out what software-defined networking benefits would be, and here's a guy who already gets it. He wants the next layer. What can I do with it as an application developer? And at that point, we're kind of, wait a minute, you're 3 steps ahead of us, but let's dig in deeper. So there are times where you get caught up in that, and the customer may be a couple steps ahead of you. They already understand what you do, but want to know how they can apply it right now. And that can be a challenge, because a lot of what we're working on networking today, specific to networking, I mean, think servers, you get a new generation every year, 18 months, that's interesting. Networking has been kind of in stasis for the last 15 years. Same architecture is very rigid, but now we're in a place with white boxing, with software defined, with open flow, with all sorts of new technologies. And these standards are not being driven by the vendors anymore. It's out of our hands. This is being driven by the customer. So when you look at the ONF, the Open Network Foundation, it's customers on that board, customers driving these standards. And the velocity is like we've never seen before. So we're getting iterations of OpenFlow twice a year. We're getting new hardware pushed at us from the Broadcoms and the chip vendors of the world every 6 months. So there are new capabilities and new densities coming online all the time, which drive interesting new architectures. So we're getting into things like not just the physical networking anymore. Now we're getting into the virtual networking. So things like VXLAN and how do I build a multi-tenant data center at scale that I can be more agile with. So there's a lot of moving parts these days, and that's the part that's really exciting to me because it's not the same industry it was 2 or 3 years ago.
So talking about networking, how do you network in a business sense?
Mm-hmm.
What is your networking routine?
My routine is you have to keep those technical relationships at the front line. So you can't go around, in my case, the guys who own the network. Now that's even shifting. You used to have guys running around that were Cisco engineers. Now they're more likely to be general network engineers, so they know Ethernet, they know wireless, they know everything. But then you have to move up that stack a bit. So you have to talk to the managing director of that. You have to, in a global organization like I work with. But you also end up having to cross paths and talk to the financial folks. We have a lot of corp-to-corp relationships in a big company like HP. So we end up talking to CFOs in large companies. We end up talking to CIOs, managing directors, executive directors that don't get their hands dirty with a keyboard and helping them understand the initiatives that we're trying to build down below. Now what we do is if we're talking to the networking guys, we're talking about, hey, that access point, it has these features, it does these things, it goes to 11. But the minute we step up towards an executive director or a managing director, we're having a bigger discussion about mobility. So that brings into play not just my stuff, but it'll bring in software, it'll bring in our TS, our technical service consulting guys, to flush out that mobility, which isn't just the networking part. It crosses all of the disciplines within our company and maybe even our partner companies.
So if I'm hearing correctly, it sounds like what you do is you leverage your technical trusted advisor relationship with your key contacts that you developed over the years to help you navigate through the organizations to be able to kind of leapfrog over from group to group in order to move your deals forward.
We do, and we leverage not just within the company, but we have partners that we also leverage that have relationships. Some of those may even eclipse our relationships. HP is a big company. We have large financial relationships with a lot of the companies I deal with, but there are some of our partners that have even bigger relationships. So we try and bring a unified front, an offer, a solution together for the customer that crosses all disciplines. Selling networking for networking's sake is fun. It's challenging. We're going to get beat up most times unless we leverage the rest of the portfolio. And there's a lot more going on there, especially with the acquisition of Aruba, $2.7 billion acquisition closed last month. So we've got a lot of new things to talk about. That's not just the wireless acquisition. That's also a secure edge discussion. So we can secure wired and wireless networks with their technologies. That's a new capability we didn't have before.
So to take it, if I may, in a slightly different direction, it's funny because I just came out of sales training. Sprinkler had a sales meeting in Dallas, and we had our entire global sales team there. And for me, it's kind of shocking because there were 180 people in the room.
I think you guys were 12.
Yeah. I joined the company, just short of 4 years ago, and I was number 9, and now there's 180 in the sales team.
Do they still call you number 9?
They call me lots of things. They call me lots of things. But our number 2 guy, our president, is Carlos Dominguez, and he came from Cisco, where he was number 2 there. And he talked about one of the big emerging trends he sees coming along in sales is outcome-defined sales. So instead of buying some piece of equipment or a service or something like that, the customer is going to be buying the result. the clearest indication or definition I can give you is in online advertising, for instance, an app maker for an app for a phone would purchase advertising based on the number of installs for that app. So it's not how many downloads do you get or anything else. It's how many people are going to install this thing. Mm-hmm. And he sees a lot of things in sales in general, primarily in B2B or especially in B2B. I could see B2C moving there as well, but in moving towards outcome, based purchasing. I was talking to a customer or to a guy on the plane actually. Sells apps to power companies for them to give to their customers so they can monitor their home power usage and reduce their electricity usage. And his customers, the utilities, are coming to him and saying, if you can save me, or I'll buy it based on X number of kilowatt hours you can save, which has nothing to do with the software, right? That's the outcome. So are you guys seeing that kind of pressure?
Well, there's a couple different angles to that. One is a half step towards that. We do something called flex capacity. So for companies that are transforming, let's say from Windows Server 2003, they have this now mandate to move off of it. We'll stack a converged, server storage networking pod, a rack of gear, and let's break it down to the least common denominator. So one or two racks of gear, but we'll put a third one on the floor on HP's dime that they can grow into, so they don't have to go through that purchase order cycle ahead of time. Kind of compresses their time to market. So compressing time to market is important. And once they fill that third rack, then we'll put a fourth rack out, and they can keep expanding that way, kind of growing on demand. So it's kind of a half step there. But we've had some interesting requests to do things like, let's say, large financial. They're doing a branch rollout of routers. We could offer them a pay-per-use on it. So they want to shut down 10 branches tomorrow. We'll take those routers back, take them off the bill, monthly basis kind of thing. But I had one that actually said, hey, we've got a lot of ATMs out in strange places that don't get used that often. Is there any billing model you can give me that if somebody rings that ATM overnight, we pay for it? If they don't, we don't. It's really just structured financing at the end of the day. But yeah, there are ways to do very creative solutions. And I could see moving to an outcome-based, the risk is you're going to get to an outcome-based solution where a customer, the sales guy says, we'll save you 20% if you buy our stuff. Right. And they have a contract that says if we don't save 20%, you're going to give us money back. Right. And I haven't found any vendor willing to sign up for something like that yet, but it may be coming.
Well, it's happening in advertising today.
Yeah.
In online advertising, there's no question about it. So
that's the whole ad tech and programmatic space, right? Those guys are having to now prove their worth in the industry.
Yeah, the whole programmatic thing, and in software apps, and we do a bit of work in gaming, so all of those, what's the game, the World of War game that Kate Upton is advertising, but all those ads are coming from actually the guys who sit about 10 feet away from me in my office here in San Francisco, and so I apologize because I see those ads all the time.
Oh my God! I hate you on multiple levels right now.
It's got to be hard.
You did mention Kate Upton, though.
Yeah, there you go. So,
are you playing the game yet?
I tried, hated it, quit. Anyway.
But you did play it, so that says something.
I downloaded it,
okay.
So they got the download out of it.
Like a half a conversion.
But yeah. That does bring up another point, by the way, is using technology for that business reason. Remember, getting backwards toward the app developers is interesting. But and I do work with one of the larger advertising conglomerates out there, let's call them. But bringing them a capability like big data is, something that we build that perhaps an advertising company can take to their customers and sell as a service.
Right.
So the ability to do sentiment analysis across all social medias, but combine that with wireless analytics of who's walking around the mall and when and how, combined with the billing data that you got that Johnny just walked by the store 4 times because Verizon told me they did. So combining all that information and providing it as a big data solution to the customer, the advertiser.
Right.
Hey Sean, what's your morning routine?
My morning routine, it varies. If I'm in the city that day, up at 5, out by 6, in the office by 8. We've got an office that is virtually impossible to get to in New York City. It is very, way on the west side, so it takes about half an hour longer than it should. But normally when I'm in the city, I hit 3 or 4 customers during the day. I only have a handful of customers, so it's a little bit easier than most. And then a couple of days a week, I'm in the home office right here in this spacious corner of the world. But when I'm home, it's usually a lot of conference calls, phone calls, webcasts.
I thought you were staying at the Taj Mahal there when I was looking back. I think you were telling me that.
Is it a gold ceiling? It could be.
Exactly. So, what drives you to that next sale?
Well, like most salespeople, we're coin operated. Obviously, at the end of the day, that's important. We all have families to support, but more than that, a lot of us like the blood and the water of a sale. We like the mechanics that get underneath the sale. There is a natural flow to it that I think we all get in tune with and enjoy doing. Part of it is on the front end, educating. That's a lot of fun, where you get to teach somebody something new. But that working it through the cycle, where you actually have solved a business problem at the end of the day and made a customer elated, that's what it's about.
I like that.
What is an app, a gadget, or some kind of application that you use that has changed your sales life?
HP moved to Salesforce a couple of years ago. That one's definitely changed everything. I've used it in previous places.
I'm sorry, I should have said changed it for the positive.
No, actually it has been a positive the way we're using it. We were on an old Siebel system. Everybody hated it, and our CEO got on stage at the sales conference 3 years ago without ever having talked to Salesforce and said, we're going to Salesforce. And it actually was the smoothest transition of a broad sales app I've ever seen. Not one person had a bad thing to say about the transition. But now they're expanding it outwards, where I can put in requests for engineering help. I can put in requests for demo gear. I can collaborate with my solution architects, my engineers. I can collaborate with the smart guys in the room, all through this tool. So it actually has changed it quite a bit. But other than that, it's me living off of my daily regimen, and I'm looking at them all here is an Android phone. My calendar's on there. I'm looking at an 8-inch tablet. Everything's on there as well. That's the one I primarily use when I'm traveling. And then I'm looking at a 10-inch HP Windows 8 tablet, and that's what I use when I travel. That's my version of a laptop. So I can fit everything into a tiny little Timbuktu bag and be online, offline, not plugged into a wall socket anywhere for a full day. So I'm kind of the ultimate road warrior, and I've honed my kit down as small as it can get and still be fully useful.
Nice. Are there any other apps that you use? Do you guys use things like, or do you leverage things like, maybe LinkedIn Sales Navigator, Data.com, Discovery.org, or RainKing, or any of those types of tools?
Internally, we use RainKing and tools like that. Those are more relevant for people that have a larger patch than I do. The small, medium business guys that have 200 accounts in their patch. I have a handful. I have less than 10, and it's my job to be intimate there, and I'm not going to get that through a ranking report. I'm going to get that by walking the halls and talking to people and navigating. We just started using Yammer internally, which is kind of a Facebook for business application. It's kind of interesting. So we've got a bunch of groups on there. There's everything from one specific to networking. There's one for HP wine fans. There's one for photography. So there's not just business use going on it. I think it's great. It's very collaborative. And I think the goal of both the Salesforce initiative, the Yammer initiative, and that's a combination of multiple social tools that we use, is to reduce the email. I mean, the flood of email daily is insane. And anything we can do to reduce that, I think, would make everybody happier. And it makes it more real time. So we use Link for everything. We do a lot of Link chats. We do a lot of Link voice conferences. So that cuts down on a bunch, but I think Yammer and Salesforce will cut that down even further.
So with all these tools that you have at your fingertips, just have one other question about this stuff. What are you doing now in companies like some of the largest banks that are out there? Because I'm also working and targeting financial services have literally shut off voicemail. So you know that their email boxes are flooded beyond belief.
Yep.
I've been reduced to sending text messages to people to get their attention, and that seems to be working for the moment. Not stun texting people, but the occasional text message, hey, I know you guys don't have voicemail anymore. Figured I'd send you a text to link up. I'm like, that's creative. But how's that working for you?
It's a new challenge. You're right. Text messaging is one way to do it. Email still gets responded to if it's important enough to them. LinkedIn messages, they carry a little bit different tenor than just a straight email sometimes. So LinkedIn is a good tool I use. But a lot of the next level ups, they have admins. Those admins still do have voicemail. They still do use the email and check it on a regular basis. So I find them sometimes to be more responsive and an easier way to get on the calendar.
Yeah, that's what I've been doing, actually. I'm getting very good at learning the admins' names of all the execs that I'm targeting.
And what they like to drink, yes.
Yeah. Thanks for that. That's actually helpful.
Do you use any social media tools for your selling?
LinkedIn is probably the biggest one I use. I actually spoke to somebody at LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago because apparently I'm one of the power users within HP, and they wanted to just understand how I use the tool. But yeah, I've got more than 1,000 contacts on there. I'm connected very, very well. I use it daily. So I definitely keep up on it. And what I use it for, and I actually have it in front of me now, is things like job changes. I want to know who's changed from, moved up, moved sideways, moved out. I want to get that notification early, as quickly as possible, because it helps you understand the politics.
Have you tried Sales Navigator or Connected?
Not yet. I've seen Connected. I haven't really played with it yet. LinkedIn has kind of solved my problem, at least for now.
What do you do with the information of when people move around? What do you do with that?
I typically will either, say hi to them on there and say, hey, you got a promotion, that's great. But more importantly, I'll take that information and make sure that our team is up to date, because remember, I can't work in a vacuum. I've got a server rep, I've got a storage rep, I've got software guys, so I want to make sure that they understand what's going on inside the account. So I'm usually the first one that finds that info, but I'll forward it out, make sure everybody else is aware as well.
And how do you forward that message?
That goes by email.
Get the pigeon out of the box.
Exactly.
Yeah. Give him the good rice. Yeah.
So I asked you before what your morning routine was. How many hours do you spend a day selling?
As much as possible and practical. There's a lot of internal nonsense that goes on in a big company. So, I try and stay off as many of those conference calls as I can. Unless I have that free time, I'll take it. But time with the customer is paramount. So I would rather forfeit a meeting internally to go speak to a customer and solve a real problem.
So something you just said, would you rather have a conference call with the customer or face-to-face?
Oh, face-to-face always. Now, it's a little more challenging in some of these globals, because each one has facilities not just near me, but they have facilities elsewhere in the U.S. So there are some people that I can only get to a couple times a year. We're putting together a trip to the U.K. right now. I'm going to hit 3 or 4 customers at the same time, but that's a once a year, twice a year kind of thing. We can't support that activity all the time. For them, there is a lot of link sessions going on. Right now, they're mostly audio. We haven't gotten to a place yet where video is as prevalent as it should be. I guess a lot of people like sitting in their pajamas or something. I just never understood why we have a webcam in every laptop and still there's no video going on.
I've not been able to crack that either. I've been doing. All of us have been doing video conferencing since the late '90s.
Yep.
I still can't get people to turn on their webcams.
No, it's still voice. And that obviously is the most critical of network services these days. So,
well, I've tried to use video on a couple of go-to meetings that I've done in the past where clients requested it of me. This is fairly recent. And between the screen sharing, the number of attendees in the video, the experience just isn't what it is when you lose the video.
Yeah.
It just literally makes it too clunky, slow, and it's just. I don't think it's just there yet.
Well, it's a theater of the mind, right?
Yeah.
I think that I think we've got people using it more frequently. I think internally. I think it's very rarely used externally or customers and things like that.
Yeah, I think the quality over the internet is spotty, and that can be challenging. We do a lot of link sessions internally where it could be acceptable. I think the half step to that is link, where it pops up your little social media profile picture every time you speak in the corner, so you know who's speaking and when. So that's kind of a half step there. At least you can get that visual. But sometimes the social media picture that's been pulled in by Outlook is not the best.
I hate link. I despise everything to do with link.
It's inevitable.
Well, that's because you have a Mac.
I don't know. Yeah, we did a demo. We're looking at some different solutions and all, and did Skype Enterprise, and got a demo from those guys. And God bless them. I'd hate to have to try to sell that thing.
Well, that is link. It's now called Skype for Business.
Yeah,
Right, yep.
yeah.
That's why
And it was
I hate
atrocious.
link.
Yep.
It's 3 steps behind what you could do with Skype.
Yeah. I have
And
both on my
Skype-
desktop. I dial out with a Skype to go number, so it puts out the number on my business card is assigned to that Skype to go. So I'll dial out with Skype. The inbounds go both places actually, so I can pick up with a headset from either one.
Mm-hmm.
It all forwards to a Google Voice number. So I mean the mechanics underneath it are all easily controllable.
As long as it all works.
It does. It does. But the bad link in the chain is always last mile. My internet provider is abysmal, and I have a choice of horrible and terrible. Those are the 2 providers I have.
Yeah. Join the club. I have seen
Interesting.
this here.
When I was at Accenture, we had the HP. It was a constant back then. It was the HP something conference, which really was a big screen in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And people could come in and look like they were sitting in the conference room next to, like, with you.
Yeah.
Telepresence solution.
Yeah, we have those in our Chelsea, it's called the CEC, Chelsea Experience Center. We've got a couple of those conference rooms, and what's interesting is we have one where they have, on both sides of the room, large TVs. And I've actually done a conference where we were doing PowerPoint in the front of the room, and I had my London counterpart telepresence in. He was in the back of the room. He could look forward and see the slides and talk to them. That was pretty interactive. It was an interesting meeting. It worked out really well.
Yeah, I'm always interested in the latest presentation gear. I think that the oldest thing about the presentation gear is the actual physical presentation.
Mm-hmm.
And the way we use PowerPoint. Chris, I'm sorry, did you say something?
No, sir.
Okay, I'm sorry. Well, it's 9:32. I don't want to overstay my welcome, but this has certainly been enlightening and interesting. Thank you, Sean, for joining us.
Anytime.
Anybody have any other questions? Going once?
No, I guess just the question is, Sean, are you going to make your number this quarter?
Already made it for the year. I'm in a good place. HP's going through some interesting times. We're splitting November 1st, so printers and PCs are going to be one side. That's not my division. We're going to be HP Enterprise, Server Storage Networking, the old EDS division, ES, Enterprise Services is called. So we're going to be Fortune 48 and 49. Look for growth out of both. I think it's going to be interesting, but it's 2 roughly $50 billion companies once we split. And I think there's going to be another year of chaos. I look for some interesting times ahead.
A year of chaos at HP? Really?
We've had a couple of years, behind us already of chaos. So what's another?
Really?
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us, Sean. I will talk to you soon. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.